Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now, the podcast where we talk about AI and all things it's affecting in commerce and culture and communications. I'm your host, Greg Matusky. I'm also the CEO of Gregory FCA, the public relations agency. My guest is Ben Turner. He's CEO of Verituity, which is a company that enables banks and financial institutions as well as enterprise to use AI and verify the authenticity of those that are receiving payments from organizations. Hey, Ben, thanks for being with us from, I guess you're down in DC.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to meet you. I have a lot of questions about exactly what you're doing in the payment space, but why don't you give me the 30-second elevator pitch about Verituity and what your role in the bigger scope of things is?
Sure, we're all about helping large enterprises and banks and their clients make what we call verified payouts or disbursements. And that's all about making sure for every transaction, we know, we verify, and we can understand all the participants, all the accounts, and have the visibility to make sure that that transaction completes with accuracy.
And let's talk about that for a second, just the size of the challenge you're facing. I mean, authorizing payments, the dark money, the dark web, all the things that we try to avoid. How big of an issue is the authentication process for companies doing business globally or doing business nationally?
Yeah, so it's an interesting challenge because there's a little bit of a perception when it comes to enterprise payments that it's all about fraud, but it's actually about errors in fraud. So a term that people have heard in the news is improper payments, the U.S. government making improper payments. Well, that's both errors and fraud. So the challenge is significant. Depending on the industry, depending on the use case, depending on the size of the enterprise and the age of some of their technology, that improper payment rate can range from 5-6% all the way up into the low 20%.
And those are just a feature of doing business. They're just making errors in the data that they have, or it's an unauthorized recipient. Where does that come from?
All of that. So it can be, let's start with the error problem. Errors are generated from legacy workflow or old mainframe systems that are running COBOL. So just errors happen, right? And then from a fraud standpoint, it ranges everything from insider fraud. A bad actor inside comes in and changes payment account information for all their suppliers. It could be an email compromise event to whether it's a supplier or an insured individual who's expecting to receive a claim. Or it could just be that payment account has been compromised. So there's a wide range of issues that cause errors and fraud. And that's why it's almost impossible for humans to deal with it. So when we started the company, we started the focus of it's really a data problem. And so using the right models, whether it's AI, whether it's a version of AI, machine learning, or whether it's something that's more of a heuristic, it's really about solving those data problems and matching the right type of model to the right problem.
Let's go back then. When you started the company, what was the aha moment? Where were you in your life, and why did you say at that point, I'm going to start a payments verification company?
Sure. So I'd been around payments and identity most of my tech career, and I was part of a really early company called Network Solutions. And we were one of the first companies to take credit cards online. And the odd thing was
you still take mine every month. So go ahead.
We had a tremendous fraud because there was no fraud detection. We were north of 30% on credit card fraud.
Wow.
And so what I figured out was with one of my co-founders is, hey, if you can understand the identity or the IP address of where that payment's coming from, you can make a decision if it's going to be safe or not. So that kind of laid the foundation to the approach where we ended up today. Before I started this company, I was part of a supply chain analytics company. And you saw the same problem in the B2B payments was how are you ensuring that you're paying that supplier on time and it actually goes to that supplier? So that's why I started this company.
And we were talking beforehand, you were talking about how Verituity is an AI first company in many realms. Let's go over some of the realms you use AI, but then also let's go into more of the payment side. But
Sure.
you had mentioned that you've really created an AI atmosphere environment where it's always looked to first.
Yeah. So, everything from our engineers using it to help with code development to our sales team using it for lead gen to our marketing team using it to help produce content. We fundamentally believe that AI can help with productivity, and it also allows you to discover things that are hard to think about when you're trying to confront multiple challenges of enterprise payments. So then we extend
Give me
that.
some of that hard to think about juice here. What is it that you don't know that you should know that maybe AI can be the precursor of or show you?
Right. Well, that's a great way to put it. So you think about it as a human, right? You have a span of knowledge you can rely on, right? And you have a span of experience you can rely on. With AI, you now multiply that by hundreds of thousands of other endpoints or data points to help expand your ability to see and your ability to understand the problem.
So then walk me through the payment side. You had mentioned early in your career, it was a simple little realization that it was, if you could identify where the API was, then you could identify what the risk was. How is that advanced? And now how does AI play a role in it?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So when we verify a payee, we're either verifying, so the payee is the recipient of a payment. We're either verifying an individual or a business. So when we do a business, we have a pretty sophisticated model that looks at over 200 feature points to make a decision. We're verifying the identity of that business entity. We're authenticating the email or maybe text, but email most times business, that email address. We're verifying the relationship between the admin and the business. We're verifying the admin's identity. And then we're verifying the payment account and the payments account relationship to the business. So all that's driven by a pretty sophisticated set of AI models that are interlinked so that at the end of the day, you're able to make a decision. Can you trust this payment because it's going to the right business and the right payment account?
Now, how much of your work is working with your clients as far as updating past practices so that you have this data available to you? And how much is it the application of what you really do? Is there a lot that goes into looking at their processes, their frameworks, and getting the data ready? Or is it mostly the application of your 200-point algorithms and what it does, the magic that it does?
Yeah, it's more about the magic that we do, right? So when you have large enterprises as your customers, you can't expect them to change their workflow or how they send you data. So we have a philosophy we call just send us your check file. We'll take it from there. And what that means is at the start of a payment, when that payment file comes out of an ERP or some legacy mainframe, we'll take that data file as it is, and we'll use AI, we'll use some other techniques to transform that data into something that's useful. Just so happens because we're in payments, we transform it into the ISO 222. And then we start looking for problems. Again, using AI, we're looking for anomalies. We're looking for indicators that a pay, may not be legitimate. And we continue that process all the way through settlement. So whether it's looking at that payment file, looking at the payee and the payment account, or that final payment instruction and the settlement that happens, it's all driven and done in real time by our suite of models.
And so give me some indication. What are your goals when you're working with like a global enterprise to to improve accuracy first and then reduce any kind of fraud? Do you have any KPIs? What's your goal when you go into these organizations?
Yeah, we're looking to see a 70% improvement. Plus
A 70% of both accuracy and risk?
Yeah, because they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Got you. That's a remarkable benefit of AI. Tell me a little.
And the interesting thing is if you're, AI learns as it goes, right? And so you don't need to do we don't look at our customers' historical data unless they ask us to help them identify things. From day one, that first transaction, we're able to start to identify improper payments or errors and fraud.
So it's self-optimizing. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
And how does it do that? What does it extract, learn, and then apply?
I mean, that's the nature of AI. It's learning, right? So the trick is to make sure you have the right controls in place so that it doesn't get off track and it's learning.
So, the podcast is called The Disruption Is Now. So I'm going to push you a little bit. And you've been around for a while. Where has that AI been most disruptive in your professional career? And what do you see it personally as disruptive?
Yeah. So I think from a professional side, there's a couple places where I've seen it be most disruptive. Like when I did the basic, hey, can you trust this IP address to receive a payment from? That was just creating a huge directory and a bunch of rules, and it wasn't going to learn. So you had to constantly update it. You had to constantly look for things that got through. The big improvement you get with AI is you don't need to continuously teach. It teaches itself. It also allows you to deal with really complex data sets. So like going back to verifying a business's identity, the fact that we look at north of 200 features per business, right? And then contributing to those features are thousands and thousands of other features. You couldn't do that without AI. And you couldn't do things like beat deep fakes. You couldn't beat like a trend that's going on in business fraud right now is the reactivation of dead business registrations by the bad guys. They go in, do some transactions. It looks like a legitimate business, and then they let it sunset again. Well, you can't detect that without something like AI helping you.
So walk me through. It's looking at all these factors. Give me like the top 10, top 20 or whatever factors that it looks for to determine whether this is an authentic payment. This is credible.
Yeah. So the theme is we look for relationships, both positive and negative. Can we establish the relationship between the payer, so the enterprise, and the payee? Can we establish a positive or negative relationship between the session behavior and the identity and the geography of that identity? Can we establish a relationship between the payment account and the business? Can we establish a relationship between other activity that's happening elsewhere? We call it our consumer index. What else is happening on the internet around that identity? Can we establish a positive or negative relationship? And so the reason we take that approach, it's really hard to beat relationships. And if you understand those relationships, then you can build a high level of accuracy or precision in your models.
Well, that's interesting to me because when you hear it, you think it's just looking at factors, right? Does it have a physical address? Does it have a banking history? But you're saying that it's looking at whether there's relationships to those factors that suggest real business activity. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and real identities.
Gotcha. Got you. All right.
So one of the largest challenges in payments in the U.S. is a lack of coverage of information on bank accounts. It's a result of how the banking industry got built in the U.S. And so you can't rely on just looking up against a third-party data set to say, hey, is that a good bank account? A lot of the times you're not going to get an answer. But AI can solve for that by looking at all these features. Can you trust the identity? Can you trust the session? Do they have history of having used that account? What's the risk around the email or mobile number they're using? All those features plus more come together to give you then trust in it that you got the right bank account.
So looking ahead in the industry, where do you think we're headed on the fraud side? Or the fraudsters always figuring out new ways? Is this AI against AI? Where do we stand and where are we going?
Look, it never ends, right? I've been around the world of cyber for a long, long time, and it's never going to end. It's always an arms race, right? Because the bad guys have an incentive, which is they get money, and their cost is fairly low, and they only need, they get 10 people to send them $10,000. That's a pretty good day of work.
So will it turn into just AI against AI, or they're constantly learning with their AI solutions, and you're constantly learning with yours?
It already is. That's why you can never stop. Right? We're one of the things that AI allows you to do is keep the number of people you need to do things down. Right? We're around 30 people, but 8 of those people do nothing but data problems. Data scientists, data engineers, because it's a never-ending race.
And what do you see on that side? I mean, here you are, you have 30 people, you're doing business with global institutions. With regard to how businesses are formed, how businesses can be operated with lesser people, smarter people, what's your gut instinct there, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what kind of business it is, and I'm just tech businesses. So if it's a B2C, you're selling to consumers, you can build a very successful company using AI with a few people. If it's business selling to small business, same thing. If you're in the business to enterprise market, you're never going to have the sales cycle or the ability to sell driven 100% by AI. You're going to have people out selling, people out developing channels. But AI in all 3 of those scenarios makes you a lot more productive per person, and it also allows you to be smarter.
Well, I'm going to thank you for being with us. It was an interesting conversation with Verituity. How do you get in touch with you, Ben, if somebody wants to learn more about the process by which you assure authenticity in transactions?
Yeah, so we're big at being personal, so we always give out email addresses. Mine is ben.turner@verituity.com, or you can go to verituity.com.
Well, thanks for being with us. Fascinating conversation. Again, we'll be at Money 2020 next week. If you're there, make sure you stop by the podcasting booth, because we'll be podcasting on and off throughout the 3 days. Best of luck to you, Ben, and I'll be watching you and see how business develops, and see if you can authenticate me as being real or unreal. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
This podcast is a production of Gregory. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.